What is going on, everybody? Welcome to my match review of Liverpool versus Brighton. At the end of a disappointing 90 minutes at Anfield, the scoreline reads Liverpool 2, Brighton 2. To be honest, this was the only game on the season so far where watching a Liverpool game, I couldn't wait for the match to end, because it felt like the longer I watched it, the more likely Brighton were to win the game, and that's a horrible feeling to have. Liverpool were dreadful today, and I know I said the Preston performance was our worst of the season so far. This beats it by 20 times, and this was a senior team. Oh my days, it's just such a horrible day for Liverpool fans, especially the ones who paid money to go into Anfield and watch that game. Oh my days, it's horrible. We were good in the first 20 minutes or so, up until the second goal. Since after that, we just dropped off. We allowed Brighton to have the ball, we allowed them to get into our rhythm, and they capitalized on that and cancel out our 2-goal lead. These days happen, but it's not a good day to remember, and we need to avoid more days like this in the future if we're gonna realistically make a title charge. At the end of a disappointing 90 minutes at Anfield, the scoreline reads Liverpool 2, Brighton 2. To be honest, this was the only game on the season so far where watching a Liverpool game, I couldn't wait for the match to end, because it felt like the longer I watched it, the more likely Brighton were to win the game, and that's a horrible feeling to have. Liverpool were dreadful today, and I know I said the Preston performance was our worst of the season so far. This beats it by 20 times, and this was a senior team. Oh my days, it's just such a horrible day for Liverpool fans, especially the ones who paid money to go into Anfield and watch that game. Oh my days, it's horrible. We were good in the first 20 minutes or so, up until the second goal. Since after that, we just dropped off. We allowed Brighton to have the ball, we allowed them to get into our rhythm, and they capitalized on that and cancel out our 2-goal lead. These days happen, but it's not a good day to remember, and we need to avoid more days like this in the future if we're gonna realistically make a title charge. On to the 3 talking points I brought from the game, and the first talking point I'm gonna bring up is the passiveness, because Liverpool, after the first 20 minutes or after the second goal, they were so passive. They weren't pressing as much. They didn't have a high energy when they had the ball. And yes, you can kind of argue that Brighton were sitting deep and they had to be patient, but they just didn't have that energy about them on or off the ball, and that really allowed Brighton to get into a rhythm and start creating chances, and that's the last thing you want against a Graham Potter side. But Liverpool, they played right into Brighton's hands, and quite frankly, we were lucky to come away with a draw. And when you play like that, you can only ride your luck to a certain extent. We rode it to the extent where we only dropped 2 points. We should have dropped 3 points there, and it's a very sad thing to say when you play at Anfield against Brighton. But Brighton have been good this season, but Liverpool were just absolutely horrendous in this 90, and the passiveness of the performance plays a major part in that. On to the next talking point then, and the bring up is the midfield, because the midfield was very unbalanced today, and I mentioned this in the review of the Preston game, and I think in the preview for this game I said Curtis Jones needs 2 solid midfielders with him to have the license to go forward. And I know before the season, most people were saying our problem with midfield is a lack of goals coming from it, but I think we have enough forward-minded midfielders, Naby Keita, Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, but we don't have enough solid midfielders to help out the defense, and the defense looked very open after like half hour of the game. The midfield was easily bypassed because Fabinho wasn't in there. You had You had Henderson in the holding role, and then you had Naby Keita and Curtis Jones bombing forward. Now, not only was the defense impacted by the midfield, but also the forward line, because quite frankly, Naby Keita was our best midfielder today, apart from Henderson, in my opinion. He was very good going forward, and when he came off, the attack looked a lot more blunt. And Ox, he doesn't defend that much, so the defense looked a lot more blunt as well. So it's a real worry, the midfield, because we're having a lot of injuries in midfield this season, and it really worries me. I've always thought that not replacing Wijnaldum was a mistake, but I didn't know it would be this bad, and it is really bad. The third talking point today is the lack of end product, because I think Liverpool were decent in the build-ups today, but the final pass let us down. It really did, because we get into positions, either somebody takes too long to pass the ball or they make the wrong pass, and we could have created a lot more chances today had we not messed up the final pass so much. And it's not been a recurring thing this season, but it is to reoccur, then it would be very worrying, because it was dreadful today, and it played a massive part in our bluntness in attack after the first two goals. Moving on then, and I will talk about the player ratings next. Starting with Alisson, I'm going to give him a 7. I mean, he made a lot of good saves today, but I'm going to take off probably half a mark or so because of that goal he conceded. I think the sun had something to do with it in his eyes, so he didn't. I'm not making excuses. He didn't react quickly enough to the shot from Mwepo, but he couldn't really do much about Trossard's goal. But overall, not a bad night for Alisson. 7 is my rating. Next, I have Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Trent, he was horrible today, and my rating for him is probably generous. I'm going to give Trent Alexander-Arnold a 6. Yeah, I said it. 6 is generous, because Trent really wasn't good today. He was caught out of position so many times. He didn't track back quickly enough, and oftentimes Konate had to go over onto his flank, leaving more space through the middle, and going forward he didn't even do much either. Normally when he's caught out of position, at least you know he's contributing attacking wise, but today he didn't. He messed up the final pass so much times. He didn't put in one good cross today. 6 is very generous for me. I'm going to give him actually a 5. He was absolutely horrendous. Next up is Virgil van Dijk, and for me, Virgil van Dijk deserves a 7.5. I think he was the best defender today. Certainly the better of the defensive pairing, but I think his diagonals will always be useful. He was good positionally and he was composed on the ball, but sometimes he did get caught out a few times, but not his worst performance. Ibrahim Konate is the next defender I will speak about. I'll give him a 7. Honestly, he's been decent since coming in. He still looks a bit raw, but I can see that he has that chemistry with Van Dijk. They know what the other is gonna do, and that's what I like about Klopp. He takes time to embed the players into the system, and Konate looks like he's been a Liverpool player for a while now. Yes, he made a few questionable decisions, but he can see the potential, and yeah, another pretty encouraging performance for a 21-year-old centre back. Moving on to Robertson, who I will give a 6. He didn't put in much decent crosses either. While he was the better of the fullbacks in my opinion, he still got caught out on a couple of occasions. But not his worst ever performance, but one of his actually no, I'm not saying his worst performance so far, but I wouldn't compare it to how bad Trent's performance. The next player to rate is Jordan Henderson, the skipper. Today's number 6. Honestly, he was our best player today. I'm going to give him an 8. I think he did well with it. Like, that goal was amazing. He mopped out the danger on a few occasions, not as good as Fabinho would, but his passing range was good as well. He was our best player on the pitch today, and when your best player gets 8, and that is pretty generous. I don't know. It's definitely a warning sign, but definitely an 8 for me. And then Navigator, who would probably get above an 8 if he stayed on the pitch. I'll give him a 7 because he only played for 25 minutes or so. But he was very good. As I mentioned, he was pivotal to our attack, but sadly he had to come off early. And next we have Curtis Jones, and Jones deserves for me a 6. I think, again, when he has to be sort of a box-to-box midfielder, or he has to take on a lot more defensive responsibility than he usually does, he doesn't look as good as when he has 2 solid midfielders with him and he has the license to go forward. So that's why for me he gets a 6. But other than that, he didn't really contribute that much going forward either. If whether or not it's for the reason I mentioned, I cannot tell you, but that's the way I see it. And next we have the forward line, and I'm going to start with Firmino. Honestly, I have to give Firmino a 6. I think he gave away the ball too often, and not even he was pressing that much after the second goal, and that shows you a lot because he is usually the one who runs himself into the ground. Yes, he dropped deep and linked up play, but he was nowhere near as good as he was in his past few performances, namely at Old Trafford, Atletico, and at Watford. And for next up, we have Sadio Mane, another 6. When a goal scorer gets a 6.5, you know it's bad. Honestly, his performance deserves a 6, but I'm gonna give him an extra half for the goal because it was a well-taken goal. But other than that, at times he took way too long with the ball, and he could have passed it, but he decided to take an extra touch that kind of kills the play. And he wasn't, his decision making was very off today, so he deserves a 6.5 for me. And next, finally, of the starting 11 is Mohamed Salah, and he deserves a 7 for me. His worst performance of the season so far, and I hate saying that because he's been world class, but this was truly dreadful. Like, he was probably the second best player on the pitch for me. And when your second best player gets a 7, that says a lot. But good assist. At times he could have done better with his opportunities, but more to come from Salah. It's just a blip for Salah. For the rest of the team, it's probably some. For the rest of the team, it's definitely Fabinho's absence for me. But honestly, dreadful afternoon for Liverpool. Now it's time to rate the substitutes, the first of which is Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. And Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, I will give a 6. He was horrible. Like, that assist was very good. The cross from deep into Sadio Mane, but he offered a lot of running and a few drives, but he had no end product whatsoever. He made good runs, but he didn't make a good pass at the end of it. He didn't make a good shot. Horrible. Finally, the final player to rate is Minamino. I'm gonna give him a 6. He didn't really have time to impact the game. Got a stupid yellow card. Well, not really a stupid yellow card, but an avoidable yellow card. He didn't really impact the game at all, so I have to give him a 6. And finally, it's time to talk about my man of the match, an award that I will give to Jordan Henderson. And keep in mind, this is just Liverpool man of the match. If it was overall, I'd give it to Leandro Trossard, but Henderson for me was the best player on Liverpool's pitch today. No arguments for me, no doubt. Henderson, man of the match. So that is the end of another video. I hope that you guys enjoyed. Please comment down below what you thought of Liverpool's performance and what you thought of my analysis of the game. See you in the next video. YNWA.